Can we have a seconder, please?
Second that, Stacy Rutterham.
Okay, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Okay, I'll call for the question. All those, it's been moved and seconded moved by Donalda McIsaac, seconded by Stacy Rutterham, that we accept the minutes as circulated. And I'm calling for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried. Moving on to the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Clerk, are there any additions or modifications to the agenda?
Hi, Chair Merritt. There's no additions or deletions this evening.
Thank you. Do any of the members have any modifications? Okay, can I have a motion then to approve the agenda as circulated?
Jacqueline,
You're moving that the agenda be
approve, please.
approved? Thank you. And can I have a seconder for that, please?
Mark Backerdax to second.
Thank you very much. It's been moved by Jacqueline and seconded by Mark that the agenda be accepted as circulated. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Contrary minded? Nay. Motion is carried. Okay. That's the agenda accepted, and I'm now calling for a declaration of conflict of interests. If anyone on the committee has a conflict of interest with any of the proposals that we're looking at tonight, I ask you to state it now. Hearing none, we will consider there are none. Consideration of deferred business, there is none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Does the clerk's office have any correspondence, petitions, or delegations?
Chair Merritt, correspondence was received for item 7.13, 7.1.3, and that was circulated to the committee.
And that was it. Okay, thank you. Okay. Are there any petitions?
No, the clerk's office did not receive any petitions for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. And no presentations. So we'll move right on to reports. 7.1 is staff reports, and 7.1.1 case number 23556, Sackville Drive in Lower Sackville. And the presentation is going to be made by Dean McDougall.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, there you are.
Yes.
People keep moving around on this screen. Thank you.
Share my screen real quick.
Thank you.
Could someone please confirm that you see my opening slide?
No, we don't.
Not yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, there we go. Oh, sorry. I had to click share.
Yeah,
There we
that's
go.
right.
Yeah.
There you are.
Thank you. Alrighty. Thanks again. So my name is Dean McDougall. I'm a planner assigned to case 23556, which is an application requesting access to multi-unit dwellings across the LS zone properties in the Sackville Drive plan area. So this application stems from a motion of Northwest Community Council that requested staff to consider amendments for the Sackville Drive land use bylaw to allow access to multi-unit dwellings across the LS zone lots. So there's no applicant per se. This is an HRM initiated examination. For site context, Sackville Drive, as many of you probably know, is the main road in Sackville, joining Middle Sackville with Highway 101. It is a mixed-use area with many commercial uses, recreational and institutional uses, multi-unit residential developments, but also serves as an access to many low-density residential developments in the area. So the area in orange identifies the properties within the Sackville Drive plan area, which would be directly impacted by any land use bylaw amendments. The area in pink outside of that identifies the Sackville plan area. Now, to help provide some further context, I'm also going to dive a little bit into the planning history. So prior to the adoption of the Sackville Drive secondary planning strategy and land use bylaw, land use and development on Sackville Drive was regulated through the Sackville municipal planning strategy. Excuse me. But in 2002, the Sackville Drive SPS and LUB were adopted in response to the community's desire to provide more specific development guidance to ensure the successful and desired growth of this commercial destination. So existing developments that would have been approved and built under the Sackville municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw that didn't conform with the new land use designations and regulations provided by the Sackville Drive secondary planning strategy and land use bylaw were classified as existing, and they were indexed in an appendix to the LUB and permitted within those new zones. But this appendix allowed the continued operation of these uses, but it prohibited their expansion. So they were grandfathered, as some people call it. So in the Sackville Drive plan, we have a land use designation known as the Downsview Beaverbank designation, or the DB designation. And one of the intents of this designation is to encourage the creation of a large format retail power center in proximity to the Highway 101 interchange and the Beaverbank connector Sackville Drive intersection. So to achieve this, the LS zone was created, and it permits commercial and retail uses that are greater than 10,000 square feet as of right. And it requires small scale commercial uses to go by development agreements, so they're discretionary. And it prohibits new multi-unit residential uses. So anything that was existing as a multi-unit residential was grandfathered, but nothing new could be built on land zoned LS. So although not permitted in the LS zone, new high density residential uses are zoned within the DB designation, as the SPS acknowledges that the market foundation they provide to support retail businesses. So to encourage a broader range of land uses and increase density and commercial and residential infilling within the DB designation, the Downsview complex zones 1, 2, and 3 were established and situated adjacent to the LS zone. So what does that look like? So shown here are two images. On the left-hand side are lands within the DB designation under the Sackville Drive planning strategy, and they're highlighted in beige or yellow. And on the right-hand image, we see the zoning applied to those lands. So the red is the DC3 zone, and the blue is the LS zone. Now the plan wants large-scale commercial uses to be located in the blue areas and residential uses to be located in the red. Now, as we discussed, the LS zone doesn't permit new residential uses. So therefore, new residential uses built after 2002 aren't permitted to travel on the land zoned LS. Now, for the most part, this isn't an issue in the area except for one particular property, and that's circled in that red outline on the right-hand image. So we have a situation where there is desire to construct a multi-unit residential building on land zone DC3, which are shown in red on that image in front of you and marked with the red X. Now, however, due to both traffic constraints and zoning rules, it is impossible. It's very difficult. The Beaverbank connector is a controlled access road owned by the province, and preliminary discussions between the property owner and the province have determined the only safe access they can even entertain would be a right in, right out off of the Beaverbank connector. So for cars to get to Sackville Drive that are residents of the proposed multi, they'd have to exit the site and go over the LS zone. But as we know, that this isn't permitted because of the current zoning regulations. So amending the zoning to allow multi-unit traffic to cross over the LS zone and exit to Sackville Drive is a possible solution that would allow the proposed multi to be built and would provide safe vehicular movement in the area. Now, a key goal of the Sackville Drive plan is to improve traffic efficiency and vehicular movement. Preliminary examination with HRM Development Engineering and Nova Scotia Public Works indicate that locations suitable for permitting new access to provincial and municipal roadways in this area are limited and challenging, as we all know. And so as such, the amendment could alleviate this concern by allowing a more efficient use of the land for traffic circulation and potentially eliminating the need for additional access points to municipal and provincial roadways to be able to utilize existing ones. So we had some public engagement on this. We had the website up, and we also did a mail out notification. It was approximately 331 properties were sent a fact sheet on this proposal, and I've only heard from 2 individuals. Webpage views were relatively low. It's 167 hits. So the 2 people that contacted me, they had no problem with it. With what was proposed. They're more seeking clarification on what exactly is happening. They thought potentially new multis could be built in the LS zone. So I just had to clarify that it's for access only. So access is the use, not a new development. So in terms of scope of review, as you can see, this proposed amendment to allow access over the LS zone really could be considered a housekeeping amendment with very little impact other than improving traffic circulation within the plan area. But we still would like to know your thoughts. And if you can identify any potential concerns or conflicts with allowing apartment building residents to use adjacent commercially zoned lots for access to and from their apartment building. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you. And I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and we will now go to each member for questions and comments. We'll begin with Gina Jones-Wilson, and perhaps you could turn your screen share off. There we go.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to turn off. Okay, we're starting with Gina Jones-Wilson.
No, I have no questions. It's kind of straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Jacqueline Levere.
I guess my only question for Dean would be, I would imagine that all the safety considerations have been looked at by the city as to, utilizing that portion of the land to get to the Sackville Drive to make sure it, I would trust that you guys have done that, and that would be my only concern, that the safety and traffic and everything works if this exception is allowed.
Yes, so with in consultation with HRM Engineering and Nova Scotia Public Works, at a high level review, it was seen as beneficial. Because this is a blanket wide amendment, and even though at this point in time it affects this sort of one property, boundaries could change and it could be applicable in other areas. Really, the detailed examination happens at permitting, so it'll have to be shown by the multi-unit developer at the time that the traffic impact would be safe. So that kind of detailed work would happen in the permitting for sure, but a high level view right now, it was seen as beneficial. So.
Okay, thank you. Donalda McIsaac.
Yeah, I don't see any way around this as a traffic nightmare getting out onto Sackville Drive, because it's Sackville Drive at the best of times, it's a nightmare. So I'm really concerned about the traffic part of it. I'd have to see a plan that really addresses the traffic at the time of construction, not that it's going to be built and then deal with future traffic problems, and as well as sort of if it's going to become a blanket, is that going to create a bigger issue in the area? So I just don't think there's enough detail for me. Thanks.
I wonder if maybe there needs to be some clarification, because I'm thinking that everybody is thinking that the plan is to take it out where that yellow line goes out across the LS lands onto Sackville Drive. And what we're looking at, I believe, is changing it so that it can go out through the commercial lands.
So that yellow line was just me drawing an example of how traffic could move over the land. So I think it's important to take a step back and not focus on this just being a one single development because it's a land use bylaw amendment. So any property could be affected by this, and it allows for the traffic to move over the lands and then enter into the municipal or provincial roadways at points that are the safest. So right now, with the restrictions in the zoning, they're required to put a new access point onto the road, which from a safety perspective is not ideal, but this would allow them to actually utilize an existing access point, which is a bit more beneficial because then that's how traffic is flowing already, and we can upgrade as necessary if needed when traffic counts get higher. For example, an additional traffic light. That's just as an example at that point on the roadways to allow for increased safety. But because this is a land use bylaw amendment, there's not an applicant requesting to build a building that would provide a traffic impact statement like you may see with other applications for a multi-unit building on a single site. So it's kind of trying to get the traffic detail. It's kind of hard to do because you don't really know what kind of development is going to happen all around in the area, right? So that detail that regarding the traffic impact happens as each building is proposed, and it will happen in the circumstance I gave as an example about that one property that would need to require to go over the lands to get to Sackville Drive. They will look at the traffic impacts then. So allowing this doesn't guarantee that they're going to get an approval to build the building if traffic is still a concern, if the amount of people they're putting on the roadways would put it over capacity. So it's just sort of a potential solution that we can provide now ahead of any type of further development happening.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess it was me that was confused, and I'll ask my questions later. Stacy Rutherham.
So I'm considering this, as you just stated, as being a blanket change. And in using this as an example, this particular site as an example, I'm thinking that this might not be the best appropriate measure for that particular option. You know what I mean? There is access to that site off of the Beaver Bank connector, just outside of the aerial shot that you provided on slide 9. And nobody has to go to Sackville Drive to get in or out of that property. Nobody has to access that particular property off the Beaver Bank connector. So I'm not 100% sure if I understand the overall objective of this change when this isn't necessarily the best change for that particular site that you're using as an example. When we take traffic and safety considerations in context here, like this particular site, you can get at that from I can't think of the name of the street, but there's another street that runs off the Beaver Bank connector just outside of the aerial shot that you would use to access the bus terminal and also the back end of the plaza there. That's how I go there to get my Chinese food. When I go out there to get Chinese food, I run in through that back entrance. So I don't go near Sackville Drive, and I don't know that having another access off of the Beaver Bank connector is the best choice. So I'm having trouble following the logic of this, and I don't know what other sites along Sackville Drive you might be looking to apply this to. So I'm not really following this as being, really kind of the best way to look at this.
Am I allowed to share my screen again? I think it'd be beneficial
Sure.
if I bring them up because I just like to clarify that it's here. Sorry, too many windows. Share screen. Here we go. Okay, so
It didn't come up.
oh, I have to,
There you go.
there we go. Okay. So
Slide
it-
9 shows what I was talking about.
Sure. I just want to
Yeah.
go back a second. So the properties that would be impacted are the only ones in blue. So right now, existing multi-unit dwellings that were built before 2002 could travel over those lands if they wanted to access say a curb cut right here, for an example. Now, it's only allowing access for new multi-unit dwellings over that land. So it's allowing something that that exists today already for existing, but it's just allowing new ones to do it in addition to that because for traffic efficiency, essentially. Now, the property in question, it's very specific along Sackville Drive, and right now, as the zoning lies today, this property here, they have frontage along Beaverbank Connector, so that is where they are to get their access from, and they can do it right now. They can get the right in, right out off of the Beaverbank Connector, but as you know, that's a fast road, and for safety concerns, and ideally for the traffic engineers, it'd be better to have an alternative option for traffic to flow to Sackville Drive and utilize an existing access cut here at the Midas entrance. So I'm not sure. I have to go back to the zoning, but I think you're stating that access could be provided behind the Canadian Tire.
Right there. I mean, you have around there, that whole area. That's an in and out for that entire, you can get to Midas from there as well. Like,
Right.
So that's why I'm not sure what, and I know this is just an example. So I guess maybe I don't see this as the greatest example because I don't know that it's the best alternative either for this particular spot.
Well, it's essentially allowing traffic to move freely on the interior lands. So right now, traffic could move out this way, but it can't move this way. So it's just sort of cleaning it up and allowing it everywhere to make sure that we can make it the most efficient it is. This property that's owned by the same property owner, so that's a benefit to them too. It's perhaps, as you saw, this is a gravel lot way. There may not be safe to move people this way where it can be controlled over this property. So the amendment is really to allow it for all multis, not just ones that were built prior to 2001, and to allow it through all the lands, just so to make it most effective, instead of limiting it again through these donut holes, so to speak, in the land, in the developable land here. So the traffic could move the best way it can through to existing access points.
And so the determination of the best access point will come up at the point of approving, like a permit approval.
That's right. Yes, and just to clarify too, that's all done in review with the engineers as well, about the access points.
Okay, Stacy. We'll move along then to Mark Backerdax.
So I just did a quick comment, Stacy. I think you were referring to Old Sackville Road and Downsview Drive as an entrance into that area, which kind of takes you off the Beaverbank Connector early in the process. So the only question I had, I guess, then is, and I drove through this area the other day just to kind of check it out, and I was thinking that were there a multi-tenant facility along that Beaverbank Connector portion of the land that wouldn't want to see people kind of cutting across all the land in front of all of the parking lots in front of the Canadian Tire and others, kind of at an angle versus at right angle. So I think any future consideration would need to consider traffic guidance or calming through all accesses in the LS zone that would be an egress from that location. And then I guess the other one would be, maybe just to echo Donalda's comment, that coming out, if indeed it came out at that close from the Midas location out onto Sackville Drive, that, you know, a left-hand turn there onto Sackville Drive would be a traffic consideration as well.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. And Trevor Ennis.
Thank you. I was looking at this myself as well, and I really don't have any issues per se with the concept of allowing traffic to get over the LS areas. It would have to be an issue dealing with each instance of any kind of traffic mitigation at that time. So I really don't have any issues with trying to allow access over an LS area if the need requires.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Diggle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. No, I have no questions. I think that it already exists with what is there now. So to allow it to continue on makes sense to me. It's more about enabling conditions, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know that sometimes I worry about if this in and out access, right in, right out is too close together. I know that that poses quite a safety risk at times. So the more we can flow traffic through, the better.
Okay, and Councillor Russell, did you wish to speak to this?
At this point, I was mainly interested in hearing the concerns that were brought forward. I was the one who brought it forward to Northwest Community Council, so I was just curious what the concerns of Northwest Planning Advisory were, and if there was anything that I might be able to help with as far as answering any of the questions. So at this point, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. This is one of the ones that I am going to speak to. And I think Councillor Russell already knows, because when I first read about it, I was totally shocked that we would consider putting a multi-unit building. We don't even know how many units at this point, allowing a multi-unit building to exit at that spot, which is virtually no distance from the crossroad, which has a multiple number of accidents. You have people coming from off the Beaverbank connector, turning right onto Sackville Drive. They're merging in there, while people coming down from my area in Middle Sackville are merging over into that same lane if they're going to Downsview Mall. And then you're going to have people coming out of the Midas place, and you've got a service station across the road that half the time the car's trying to get out of there and turn toward Downsview, can't get across. Somehow that bothers me, you know. All the times that we hear complaints about places like Bayers Road and Connaught Avenue in Halifax, we're creating the same sort of situation in a smaller space when we do things like this. Even to allow, I mean, the amount of traffic that goes in and out of Midas Muffler is nowhere near what there would be from a multi-unit building. Can that be given as a fact? I hardly ever see a car turn in or out of there. Granted, I'm not there 24/7, but I know what the traffic is like in that area. It's frightening at times because you've got just traffic coming in all directions. You've got a traffic light right there, and you know, how does somebody get across when the traffic is backed up because you've got people turning onto the Beaverbank connector, you've got people going straight ahead, and you've got people going to Beaverbank Road. How does a person who wants to go up the road or come out and go onto the Beaverbank Road How do they get across when that at every light at rush hour is lined up? I mean, it's backed up. It's not, to me, is not enough room between the crossroad, the intersection, and that driveway to really facilitate any amount of traffic coming through it. That's my rant for today. And, you know, there are probably wiser people than me that can figure it out, but I have definite qualms. I have no problem with the right turn off of the Beaverbank connector. It's coming out onto Sackville Drive. If we were going to bring it out anywhere, I would like to see it come out into Downsview Mall somewhere and then go on to Sackville Drive, where it's already used to heavy traffic and already got signals and all the rest of it. So thank you very much. We'll move along here now. And since I'm the last speaker, I will ask if somebody would like to make a motion.
Chair,
And what I said doesn't matter. Yes,
could I just ask for a clarification
yes,
from the planner?
yes.
Am I to understand that at this point, with the rules that exist, there is actually an apartment building that is doing what we're asking for, the potential one that would be new? Like that there's all kinds of multi-unit buildings using the land in the way that's not working right now very well for Sackville Drive, like, and then it would just be potentially one more building, or would there be more than that one more once we open that door to this change? That, you know, could there be other ones also and not just the one that we're afraid of?
To my research, the existing multi-unit dwellings within the DC3 zone all have their own existing access. So this would be the one scenario. They're not, other multi-unit dwellings aren't using other lands and to crossing over other lands to exit onto the public roadways. They all have their existing access points to the roadway from their lot, which is zoned DC.
Yeah. Is there any other clarification? Yes, Stacy?
I think Anne kind of elaborated a lot better than I did on why this might be the wrong example to use for this particular concept. I'm not sure why this wouldn't necessarily be a site-specific concern. I don't know why this has to be a blanket concern, because it obviously isn't necessarily the best policy for this particular corner, but it might be a really good policy for a lot of the other properties along Sackville Drive where things aren't as congested and hectic. And I agree with Donalda and Ann on this. This is a bad intersection for this kind of thing to be happening, you know, so close to, and especially during rush hour, especially because there's also maybe some alternates that you could work towards, like a driveway that goes in from the other access off the old Sackville Road, and different options. So I feel like this sort of, like Anne really did elaborate a lot better than I did on, you know, accurate kind of picture of what happens at that intersection and why this doesn't necessarily fit there. And so why not make this into something that's more of a site-specific decision when somebody wants to build a building? So.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your comments. I can't really respond because the request from the community council was to look at a land use bylaw amendment. So that's the route I've been taking it on, but those are very good comments. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of clarification or comments? Okay, so now that we will ask someone to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we allow the process to continue on for land use amendments, well, with the understanding that site-specific information will come out down the road.
I could clarify just on that real quick, if I may, that the site-specific information would be happening at permitting. So it would, and that would be as of right, because the multi-unit dwelling is permitted as of right in the zoning. So it wouldn't necessarily come back to this committee. That traffic information would be dealt with the engineers in the HRM.
Yeah,
Does
yeah. The building is able to be built. It's just that they have no access without going over land that they're not allowed to drive over. So, that's our dilemma. But we do have to make some sort of a recommendation here, and you're recommending that you want to repeat what you?
Yes, I would recommend that we allow the process for the bylaw amendment to move forward.
Okay, and do we have a seconder for that motion?
That's Mark, I'll second.
Okay, do we have any recommendations to attach to that?
I'd like to see more clarification around, and now Donalda speaking, more clarification around the blanket, because as the way it is right now, I couldn't possibly vote a positive onto it without, the traffic to me is a nightmare issue. And I guess living with traffic is a nightmare issue. It's one thing to think of it as it's going to be resolved down the road. But when it's not resolved down the road, it becomes something that you're living with. I mean, is this low rental housing, affordable housing, or what is this? It's the blanket that bothers me. I don't know what the blanket is. So at this point, I'd have to say that I wouldn't be voting in favor of it.
Okay. Yeah. So we have a motion that we accept the proposal as from to allow the change in the land use bylaw. It's the one we're changing, right? I've lost track of what we're changing. But it is the land use bylaw, I believe. And our motion says that we are willing to allow that. And did we have a seconder for that? Yes, we did. We had Mark had seconded. So Trevor's moved and Mark is seconding that we recommend that this be allowed to happen. The land use bylaw be allowed to be changed to allow for the exit to run over the LS lands. That's the best way I can put it. And I will ask now for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I got a hand up here first. Just hold on.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Kathy, Councillor Pigo-Gammon here.
Yes.
In the motion, we can add any considerations.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if we could add a consideration to say that access onto Sackville Drive, that we would like to see there to be consideration about that access to Sackville Drive. That traffic.
Well, that is what the motion says we should allow to happen. Because that's what the bylaw amendment would allow.
Okay.
Am I right there? Just checking with Dean to make sure I'm right.
Because it's a policy manual to say to go over the zone. It's not specifically Sackville Drive. So it is a blanket, right? So it's to go over any industrial, commercial, or whatever that was, where it was. So we can say that the consideration that they do consider the impact to Sackville Drive.
Yeah. We can.
Dean, am I right with that?
Yeah. So the what would happen? The amendment to the land use bylaw would be adding to the list of uses in the LS zone simply access to multi-unit dwellings.
Okay.
That would be the only thing that's written in there.
Okay. So we can't put that consideration in. Okay.
Yeah.
I get to withdraw that. Thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to let the motion go. Oh, Stacy.
Could we put a condition in that sort of lays down some framework for limiting, those accesses around such a congested intersection as the one that we're using as an example? Can we set up some kind of like a condition that we don't sort of just blanket that particular intersection, or if, I don't know, the rest of the intersections along Sackville Drive are all busy, but they're not as busy as that particular intersection. Can we not open this up, for the rest of Sackville Drive, but limit it so that it doesn't include that particular intersection, or?
No, because this is the one that they're asking to change the zoning for.
Well, I thought this was just an
or the
example.
land use for.
I thought this was just an example.
It is, but it isn't. Dean, would you like to answer that?
Yes, because of the nature of the request and the amendment, we can't be specific, as detailed as you like to say, not at this intersection. And yeah, unfortunately, that's just something outside of the scope that we could be so specific with this amendment.
So Dean, is it fair to say that we have to rely on the traffic engineers to do their best job when they are looking at this when it comes to permitting?
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam,
Jacqueline.
I'm sorry to ask this, but I can't vote unless I get an answer to this question. Now that you're talking about a blanket change, does this affect other similar properties throughout HRM?
No.
Oh.
It would be specific to those properties I showed on that map, the blue properties.
Okay. And
yeah.
The only difference is that right now, existing multi can go wherever they want and new multis cannot.
That's correct. Over the LS zone. That's the zone we're talking about.
LS zone.
Yeah.
And as we know it would only affect one property.
Today.
No.
Yes.
Today, but how many other potential properties are we talking about?
If I could share my screen, it would be all those properties I showed in that map, but most of them are already developed and already have existing access points.
That's what I'm wondering. How many potential new? Are we talking 8, 10, 15, 22?
If I could share my screen again, I could show that.
Sorry, just an important consideration before voting. Are we saying blanket yes to 10 properties or 1 or 2 is a big difference when we
well,
add
it would be blanket yes to all properties because it's being added to the zone as a permitted use. But in terms of its effect, say the day after it's approved, I will show you the properties very quickly. Oops.
I think it was slide 9 that showed, yeah.
Yes, so most of these have already been built up. So it's I think if I'm correct, it would mostly only be these 2 in the corner here because we have permits issued for the DC3 down here. And then up here, if it's redeveloped, it doesn't really affect them because they have access to Sackville Drive already. Right, they front onto Sackville Drive. So in terms of, it would be these 2 properties, but this also has frontage there. So it's the impact, it would be minimal. If that helps answer your question. Does that help?
It does. It's a lot better than 20.
Okay. Okay, if your screen is not clearing.
I
So
know, I'm trying to, there we go.
there you go. Technology is wonderful when it works. Okay. All right. Well, we have a motion. And okay, I'm going to have to limit some of this because we have 2 other things to look at, but I'll let you ask one more question, Stacy, and then Paul wants to speak.
Okay, just thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, if I go back to slides 3 and 4, where you show a further view down Sackville Drive, I guess that's where I'm confused about the context of all of this. You know, we're concentrating on one section of Sackville Drive, but I was of the understanding that this LS zone exists further down Sackville Drive. I guess that was just my misunderstanding from the presentation. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Paul.
Thank you. The challenge with this site is the DC3 property, since we're looking at this corner. This property is locked in by Beaverbank Connector on one side, the LS property on another side, and Downsview Mall on the other side. Ideally, it would be nice to be able to get egress through Downsview Mall. That is, I think that's permitted, but the property owner is not allowing it. So for the multi-unit building to be able to get access to Sackville Drive, it would have to go across the one property. It would be the driveway that is being used by, it would be the Midas Muffler driveway that is being used. And the reason for that is because Beaverbank Connector is, as Dean mentioned early in the presentation, a controlled access highway. It's owned by the province. And so egress by an intersection, it has to be 60 meters away from the intersection. And that is the Midas Muffler driveway. So it couldn't possibly be any closer in it. For a multi-unit building, it really couldn't be anywhere else. Stacy, you were wondering about going out the back by Downsview Drive. There is the Canadian Tire property and the rest of the Downsview Mall property that are blocking it in there. It doesn't connect to Downsview Drive at all. So it would be simply, this is really the only way that people would be able to get out if there was a multi-unit building put there. I hope that doesn't muddy anything.
No, it doesn't muddy it. It doesn't make it feel any better though. I'm thinking of the fact that not that long ago, we moved the driveway for the Kent Building Supplies away from that intersection because of the number of accidents that were happening there. And now we're putting another driveway. Well, we're using another driveway that already exists, but for a higher traffic level that's not much further away from the intersection than the Kent one was. And you have a corner with people coming around it with less view of what's going on than you had with the Kent corner. So that's my fear, but I'll let it go. We do have a motion. It has been moved by Trevor and seconded by Mark that we approve of this plan. And I'm going to call for the question. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Can I try that again? Could you hold your hands up, please? 1, 2, 3, 4. You're leaning on your, okay. You're voting yes. So that's 5. Yeah, I said 5.
voting no, Madam Chair.
And okay, you're voting aye.
No,
Gina?
Ronaldo's voting no.
No, I know. I'm Gina had her hand up there at the end. So you're voting yes? Okay, so contrary minded nay, and I'm going to say nay.
Nay.
So that's 2 nays. 3 nays. And let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Madam Chair, that does
yeah.
add up to 8.
Yeah, it's 5 to 3. So the motion is carried, right? Am I
That is
right,
correct.
Andrea?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the motion is carried, and that is all we're going to do with that one tonight. Thank you very much, Dean.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, moving along here. Our next case is number 23904, and that is 1036 Lucasville Road in Lucasville. And the presentation is going to be given by Claire Toos, right?
You nailed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, whenever you're ready.
All right. Is that showing up for everybody?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Hello, Northwest Planning Advisory Committee. My name is Claire Toos, and I'm one of the planners on the Rural Policy and Planning Applications team. Today, I am presenting case 23904, which is an application for an amendment to the existing Timber Trails Mobile Home Park Development Agreement. The applicant for this application is Brighter Community Planning and Consulting on behalf of the Timber Trails Home Limited and on behalf of the Timber Trails Home Limited Mobile Home Park, and the subject site is 1036 Lucasville Road in Lucasville. The proposal is to amend the existing Timber Trails Mobile Home Park Development Agreement to only include the lands which contain the mobile home park use and the supporting sewage treatment facility, which is across the road. This image shows the existing development agreement applied to the properties shaded in pink, and the thick red line delineates the subject property. On the left, circled in red, is the general site location along Lucasville Road in between Hammonds Plains Road and Highway 101. On the right, you can see the subject property outlined in red, located across the road from the active mobile home park. Here are a few images of the site and the various existing driveway entrances off of Lucasville Road. This graphic shows the areas of the development agreement to be amended. The gray areas are proposed to be discharged, and the yellow areas are to remain. So the small yellow portion in the red circle is the only area proposed to be added to the development agreement. It contains part of the sewage treatment facility that is already existing. The subject property is designated MUB, Mixed Use B, under the Beaver Bank, Hammonds Plains, and Upper Sackville Municipal Planning Strategy, and the enabling policy is Policy P19, which allows consideration of mobile home parks through the development agreement planning process. The base zoning for this property is MU1, Mixed Use 1, and the existing use on this property is the sewage treatment facility, which supports the Timber Trails Mobile Home Park across the road. A portion of the lot is also currently being used for the storage of school buses. The enabling policy under the MPS is Policy P19, which allows the development of mobile home parks. Policy P19 requires Council to consider the following in rendering their decision on an amendment to the development agreement. Proximity to properties zoned R1, C4, I1, or I4 to a minimum of 200 feet. That access to the mobile home park is not through an R1 zone, the adequacy of road networks, adequacy of on-site services, the suitable development controls in terms of type of use, height, bulk, lot coverage, open storage, and signage, the site suitability in terms of slope, soil, geological conditions, and water courses. So this is the policy that enabled the mobile home park use in the first place back in 2009, and therefore it is also the policy that enables the development agreement boundary adjustment. So there is no expansion proposed for the mobile home park. The primary purpose of this application is to include the lands that contain the sewage treatment facility in the DA and discharge the lands which are not being used for the mobile home park. The level of engagement completed was consultation, which was achieved through a mail-out notification. The feedback from the community included the following: clarification as to what it means to discharge a development agreement, as well as clarification as to how the amendment to the development agreement may impact the residents of the Timber Trails Mobile Home Park. 449 notifications were mailed out, and I received 2 phone calls. And as for the website, we received 44 unique page views for an average of about 4 minutes for each view. So tonight, we are asking Northwest Planning Advisory Committee to please advise any recommendations and considerations regarding the proposal, taking into account the MPS policies P19 and P137, which is the implementation policy for the DA. So the 2 things we're asking about are the types of land uses to be controlled through the development agreement and the impacts of reverting the remaining lands back to the MU1 base zone. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. And we'll get, okay. So this time we're going to start with Trevor Ennis. Questions, comments?
Thank you. Knowing that area fairly well, I really can't see any issues with denying this particular activity from taking place, reverting back to what it was in the areas that are unused, and taking on part of the sewage treatment facility area so that they can have that underneath the umbrella of the agreement. I have no issues whatsoever with it.
Thank you. Okay, Mark Backerdux.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy Rutherham. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are.
I don't think there's any issues with discharging the development agreement, but I would think that we would want to make sure that any land use would be compatible with residential, considering that that is a residential area there. So that would be my only concern.
Okay. Donalda McIsaac.
No, I'm good. I would agree with Stacy around the land use, but outside of that, I'm fine.
Okay. That's it for you. Okay. Jacqueline Levert.
Just a quick question for our planner, that there's no negative impact on the people who currently live in that mobile park by doing any of this. Like, I know that it just means we're adding the sewage. I imagine that it makes no difference that the sewage would be under the development agreement or not under the development agreement. It's still looked at by the city to make sure everything's being done right. But by doing any of this, is it having any impact on the people who live in the park?
Nope, nothing would change with the sewage treatment facility, and there would be no other changes to the development agreement provisions. The difference would just be the form of land use across the road won't be mobile homes necessarily. It would be uses permitted in the MU1 zone.
Thank you. All right. That was my son calling from Alberta. I just hung up on him. Gina Jones-Wilson.
No, I have no issues. I'm quite familiar with that area too. And yeah, he's just reverting back to an old mixed use and adding on a couple of spots that are next door to the Timber Trails mobile home park anyway. So no.
Excuse me. I'm busy. I'll call you back. I'm in a meeting right now. Goodbye. Sorry about that, but he'd keep calling back. All right. Okay. So you're satisfied that everything will be fine there. Okay, good. And my only question is, what uses are possible in the MU1 zone? It's pretty hard to know whether anything that went there would be disadvantageous if you don't know what could be there.
Fair enough. So I can read them out for you. So no development permit shall be issued in any MU1 zone except for the following. So the following residential uses, which are single unit dwellings, 2-unit dwellings, boarding and rooming houses, bed and breakfast, senior citizens housing, existing mobile dwellings, existing multiple unit dwellings, daycare facilities for not more than 14 children and in conjunction with permitted dwellings, business uses in conjunction with permitted dwellings. And then there's a list of other uses, which include institutional uses except fire and police stations, open space uses, commercial uses permitted in the C2 general business zone, trucking, landscaping, and excavating and paving services, agricultural uses, forestry uses, and wooden furniture manufacturing, composting operations, and school bus yard, which was recently added to this zone back in, I think it was September, under case 23111. And for each of these uses, as with any use in a zone, there are specific development controls that would have to be met. So if it was, if it was a landscaping business, they would have certain development controls for a school bus yard, certain buffering and landscaping distances, etc.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Okay, so now we know that it sounds like it would be pretty benign. Would someone like to make a motion, please?
I will make a motion that we allow this change to happen.
Okay,
Mobile park.
thank you. And that's Jacqueline Levert and seconder,
I'll second it.
seconded by Donalda McIsaac, that we approve of the application to add pieces to the development agreement and discharge other pieces. I guess that's the best way to put it. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Nay. Motion is carried. Okay, one more case and then we can all go home. The next case is case number 22547, which is Winslow Drive, Upper Tantallon. And the presentation is by Maureen Ryan.
Good evening, everyone. And Andrea, I thought I would try this sharing the screen and going to the slide. So
You have the privilege to start sharing your screen. So
okay,
looks like it's going to work.
You
just need to full screen it now.
Yeah,
it's good.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you for that confirmation at the moment. Everyone, my name is Maureen Ryan. I'm a planner with Rural Policy and Planning Applications, and I'm here to present a case to you that was previously presented to the Northwest Planning Advisory Committee on March 3rd, 2021, just one day shy. Well, we're a year ago. This is for the proposed development of a commercial shopping complex at the intersection of Winslow Drive and Hammonds Plains Road. There were 3 lots involved, Lot 4A and Lot 4B on the northwest quadrant of that intersection of Winslow Drive and Hammonds Plains Road, and Lot 3B, which was on the northeast quadrant of that intersection, closer to Stillwater Lake. And their proposal was to construct 3 commercial buildings on 3 separate lots. And at the time, they were seeking a change in the plan area boundary, which I will explain to you in just a second. This is the general vicinity of the proposed development. It's near the exit 5, which is the Tantallon Growth Center under the regional plan, or the Tantallon Shopping Center. The proposed development was, as I said, right at the intersection of Winslow Drive, which forms a secondary access to a major residential subdivision a lot off of Winslow Drive in the on the back of the Tantallon Center, and they were proposing to exit onto the Hammonds Plains Road for left-hand, right-hand turning lane from these 3 commercial development sites. At the time, this pink shows the planning boundary for planning districts 15, 18, 19, or what is known as Beaver Bank, Hammonds Plains, and Upper Sackville. And the yellow boundary shows planning districts 1 and 3 in St. Margaret's Bay. And what the developers were asking at the time was to have this boundary adjusted to include these parcels within planning districts 1 and 3 and have the area zoned in mixed use 1 under the land use bylaw for St. Margaret's Bay. The proposal at the time was for the construction of 3 commercial buildings. 2 of them would have in total, at the time, the total commercial floor space, because it was on 2 floors. And I'm sorry, I'm not seeing this slide myself because of all of the imagery in the corner here. Let's see if I can minimize this. At the time, they were proposing 7,500 square feet per building, and roughly half of that on the first floor. These were 2-story buildings. In total, they were proposing to develop 22,500 square feet in total in all 3 buildings on lots 4A, 4B, and lot 3. The applicant's rationale was that the boundary alignment would enable the development that is consistent with the surrounding context, that the site currently abuts properties that are zoned MU1 within planning districts 1 and 3, and commercial uses have been developed there. And they noted the presence of the Nova Scotia Power Easement over one of the sites assures separation and buffering between residential development and the proposed commercial development. The staff review to support an application for an amendment to the plan found that the presence of the Nova Scotia Power infrastructure and the existing street right-of-ways, the impact of noise and headlights and privacy, it was felt that the site configuration would propose, challenges to future residential development at these locations from Tantalon. And a full review at the time was suggested that we consider rezoning or zone amendments, look at development agreements or site plan approvals. And we would look at the specific types of commercial uses that would be appropriate for the site circumstances, the feedback received through community engagement initiatives, and the feedback received from other HRM departments and teams. We also felt that given that the site was within the boundaries of the Tantalon, Upper Tantalon Rural Growth Center, it was worthy to consider this proposed amendment. A public information meeting, a virtual public information meeting, was held on December 9th, 2020, at which time we received 28 mailed-in notifications, and we had 8 people in attendance at that virtual PIM. We also received 13 emails and letters concerning the proposed development at that time. The public feedback, there were concerns around traffic, increase in traffic on adjacent private lanes. They were very concerned about traffic impacting Earl Rettison Lane, Stillwater Lane, and which is a private lane, and traffic impacting Earl Rettison as well, which was on the northeast quadrant around lot 3. They were concerned about the validity of the traffic information impact study statement, which they felt didn't take into account the use of other motorized vehicles like scooters and pedestrian access and bicycles and ATVs. They also felt that the timing of the collection of data around COVID-19 and outside of summer travel when this area is, heavily impacted, was also a drawback to the validity of the findings. They were concerned about environmental impacts, in particular runoff impacting Stillwater Lake, as it is a water supply for the people living on Stillwater Lane. Many people felt there was, a high degree of impact on wildlife. They were concerned about the loss of the wetland on Lot 3, that particular lot that was closest to Stillwater Lake on the north east quadrant of the intersection. They were concerned about the impacts of light pollution, noise pollution, both during construction and post-development as well, in particular in terms of hours of operation and how that would impact the quiet enjoyment of this residential area. They were concerned about impact of refuse, attraction of rodents, smell. They were concerned about basic disruption to the quiet, private, and safe residential area, potential for theft, vandalism, destruction of property, and negative impact on property values. And we also heard from a few people that they had bought their properties within the Stillwater Lake area because the area was zoned R1, single unit dwelling, and they felt that commercial development would fundamentally alter the character of this residential community, and that's not what they had bought into when coming into the area. The Northwest Planning Advisory Committee reviewed the matter on the 3rd of March 2021. I'm sorry, it says 2022 here, note my mistake. But in 2021, the Northwest PAC recommended rejection of the application due to the following: lack of alternatives to moving the boundary line. You weren't particularly enthralled with the idea of encompassing this area within planning districts 1 and 3 and applying the mixed use 1 zone, which was very liberal and very open to all types of uses. You were concerned about that proposal at that time. You were concerned about the lack of wetland delineation report, particularly with respect to lot number 3. You were concerned about traffic study concerns and lack of information with respect to commercial uses that could be developed there under the MU1 zone, light pollution, noise concerns, and inappropriate zoning. So in response to the Northwest Planning Advisory Committee and the public concerns, the consultant has come forward with a revised proposal. They have dropped lot 3 from the request for consideration on the northeast quadrant of the intersection of Hammonds Plains Road and Winslow Drive. And they've consolidated the amount of commercial development on lots 4A and lot 4B. In these areas, they're now proposing to develop 2 commercial buildings, which would be 2 stories in size. The building footprint for each of those buildings would be 6,000 square feet or 12,000 square feet per building, for a total of 24,000 square feet, which is roughly 1,400 square feet above what they had initially proposed with lots 4A, 4B, and lot 3. Here is a view of the building elevations. In this area, they are proposing a total of 88 parking spaces, and they are proposing to establish screening and buffering, although I would note that this is not an accurate depiction of what would eventually incur, because they are proposing this through a development agreement, and through detailed review we will come up with a site development that would address those concerns relative to screening and buffering from the surrounding from the nearby residential use in Stillwater Lake. The existing zoning of the area is R1 single unit dwelling, and it is within the residential designation, which is intended to protect the low density residential environment. The existing use of the land is vacant, and there is no enabling policy to consider the proposal. They are requesting that we no longer amend plan area boundaries to include these lands within planning districts 1 and 3. They have discarded that proposal. Instead, they are requesting that we enable the following uses to be considered by these commercial developments to be considered by development agreement. They have no specific list of commercial uses because that they are proposing at this particular point in time, because commercial developments require leasing arrangements, and they have to attract potential tenants. So they are requesting that we allow for the types of uses permitted for commercial development under as follows: retail stores, food stores, service and personal service shops, offices, banks, financial institutions, full service and takeout restaurants, commercial entertainment uses with full service restaurants. We use the term commercial entertainment uses in this plan area because that is the term deployed under the land use bylaw, but that means that could include things like lounges, or a tavern, or but we're requiring here that it be with a full service restaurant only. Bakeries, motels, service stations, greenhouses and nurseries, veterinarian clinics, and indoor kennel, building supply outlets, or drive-in and take-out restaurants, display courts, craft shops, farmers markets, or medical clinics. That is the range of uses they're asking for consideration of by a development agreement. The development agreement would enable us to design, layout, and establish layout and controls on appearance to facilitate compatibility with the surrounding uses. It gives us the opportunity to plan for sedimentation and erosion control, and to require plans for stormwater management and site grading, ensuring that the pre and post development flows from the site match, and to prevent stormwater impact in the surrounding area. The development agreement would also allow us to establish requirements for landscaping and screening, which is what I spoke to previously, that we would get into greater detail with under the terms of a development agreement. It enables us to control parking and to establish controls on traffic, controls on lighting. It also allows us to establish controls on hours of operation, which was a concern from the Stillwater Lake community. And it allows us to establish requirements for maintenance of the proposed development. I would like to note at this juncture, although I don't have a slide in this presentation to depict that, we have received a number of submissions via the clerk from Stillwater Lake residents. I have counted in total 8 submissions, all of which are, telling us that they still object to the proposed development despite the changes, and their concerns are around inadequate screening, traffic impact, proximity to Winslow Drive, Hammonds Plains Road intersection. They have concerns with that. Hours of operation, no guarantees. They felt increased stormwater impacts, garbage, validity of traffic study. Again, a question. We also heard from people that they were very concerned about the impact on wildlife. And the impact of stormwater runoff on the lake system, Stillwater Lake, and the chain of lake system, including Hughley, Lewis, and Round Lake in that chain of lake system. I think I've summarized what I have heard in the submissions coming forward, but I believe those have been presented to the Northwest Planning Advisory Committee. So you yourself, having read them, would probably have as good of an understanding of the community concerns to date with respect to this revised proposal. So we're now at the juncture where we're asking the Northwest PAC, is this an appropriate, is commercial development an appropriate use at this location within the Tantallon Growth Center at the intersection of Winslow Drive and Hammonds Plains Road in the northwest quadrant, situated away from the northeast quadrant, removing lot 3, removes the need for the wetland delineation that you previously requested, since that was the location of the wetland, and it's no longer included within the proposal. Lot 3 removal moves development further away from the Stillwater Lake community. That we may require stormwater management and erosion control, sedimentation control plans be submitted at the permitting stage to prevent impact on the lake. And the development agreement would also give us control on lighting, landscaping, design to prevent impact on the community. It gives us the ability to control hours of operation, and the range of proposed commercial uses are in line with the types of uses permitted in a commercial complex of this size. And the TIS has been stamped and approved by the engineer, and I believe many of the the transportation impact study advised that there was sufficient residual capacity within the road network leading to the development to accommodate the proposal. It gave us a recommendation on the location of the driveway for the northwest quadrant, and at the time for the east quadrant, because that's what the transportation impact study statement was evaluating, was all 3 sites. And at that time, they had recommended a location for the driveway to lots 4A and lots 4B, which the consultants have delineated on the site. And they that was the main recommendation, was the location of the of the driveway to lots 4A and 4B to meet the stopping site distance requirements of HRM, but they found no other concerns for the study did not identify any need for traffic lights or left-hand turning lanes or any other infrastructure improvements, because they felt that the proposed development was in line with the capacity of the infrastructure in the area. We will take a look at this TIS study in greater detail with this revised proposal going forward under detailed review. So with that, I would like to leave this to the committee for any questions or comments that you may have. At this point, Madam Chair, do you want me to stop sharing the screen so you may
Yes,
have?
yes, please. Makes it easier for me to see people.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to start this round with Donalda McIsaac for questions and comments.
Yeah, it sort of looks not much different from some of the concerns we had before, especially around the traffic. But with Lot 3 being removed from this particular project, does that mean that at a later date, the developer would come back and try to reintroduce Lot 3 to a different project?
Just to clarify, through you, Madam Chair, to Donalda, if we recommend an amendment to the municipal planning strategy to allow consideration of this development on these two sites, it would be these two sites only. They may well come forward at some point, future point, ask, either Raymore or some other consultant or developer asking for consideration, but they would have to go through the same type of process, and it would require amendment of that municipal planning strategy through to regional council.
Okay, thank you. And the traffic issue, that still seems to be a concern, especially with the possibility that even a motel or something could be put onto the property. Just sort of wondering how the traffic issue really would be addressed.
Well, from what I reviewed from the traffic impact statement prepared, they looked at the typical amount of traffic that would be generated by a commercial complex. We will go back and ask the consultant to confirm through Griffin if this is still the case with what they're proposing, because at the time, Griffin had looked at an office complex for one of the floors on the building, and they looked at a commercial complex, but I believe it's my understanding that they were very conservative and used the commercial traffic generation rates as their means of considering the need for entry into the onto Winslow Drive, what traffic would be generated at the intersection of Hammonds Plains Road and Winslow Drive, and if it met the stopping site distance requirements of HRM. So we will go back and revisit that in light of the change of the proposal. But to date, the traffic impact statement seems to suggest that the only concern was the location of the driveway at one point, which has been relocated to where the consultant had recommended to meet HRM stopping site distance requirements.
Okay, thank you, Donalda. Stacy Rutterham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually went back over my notes that we had from our last meeting about this particular site, and the boundary question back then related to the fact that they couldn't rezone the property, in the zone that it was in, and they wanted to tie it in with the surrounding zoning. But what we pointed out at our last meeting, which is still the case today, is that it is still surrounded by residential properties. In fact, one of the submissions that was made on this version of the plan was from a resident who has purchased land across the street from this particular property and is building a house. After searching high and low for a home in the area and not having any luck in doing so, they finally were able to buy a piece of land and are building a home immediately across the street from this property. So it's still a residential zone. It is still a concern for all of the surrounding properties, both, you know, immediately across the street from it on Winslow, as well as across from it on Hammonds Plain. So they're still trying to incorporate a mixed use zoning amendment or a change to make it a mixed use site, but it's still a residential site. And that also brings me to the concerns I have about a development agreement enabling uses that are not currently allowed in a residential zone. They're essentially trying to rezone this property by adding uses that are not permitted. And, you know, if the land can't be rezoned for whatever reasons in the plan or whatever policy, you know, stipulates that, are we setting this situation up to be a recurring theme with, is this setting a precedent where we're taking properties or sites that can't be rezoned? And are we going to allow them to start adding prohibited uses by development agreement? Are we going to be doing this in a lot of other places? I do know that a lot of time and energy was spent. This came up in our last meeting about this, in creating the village plan, in making sure that these kinds of developments were staying within the business area around, I can't remember the exact names and terminologies, but around the Sobeys Plaza and that complex around the recreation center. There's a lot of fast food and gas stations and all kinds of other businesses in that particular spot. We had a discussion about there being a lot of commercial space, unused commercial space in that area already, which is at the next intersection down. And then also the fact that, you know, I really feel for residents when they've invested and lived in a residential area that is, you know, basically a very natural area, and some of them for decades, and suddenly somebody wants to come along and build a gas station or a fast food restaurant or some sort of development that is not going to be, you know, be compatible with the area that they've chosen to live in. And the other part of this, to me, I don't understand the logic of considering allowing all of these non-compatible uses that are not allowed in a particular zone, because then you're just asking for every other developer that wants to change a residential zone somewhere else to use this as an example, you know, in future projects. And I thought we've talked about this a few times in the past too, about maybe getting away from the site-specific amendments that change the overall plan for a particular area and have an impact on local residents or local developments of different sorts. So.
Okay. Do you have any answers that you want to fill in there, Maureen, or?
Just an observation that, you know, it is one of our processes, because these plans were developed in the 80s, a long time ago, and there wasn't a lot of development in the area at the time. I mean, downtown center wasn't even a thought in the process when this plan was adopted in 1987. You know, we figured out that this area should be allocated for residential use, and it might still be, in your opinion, an appropriate area for the continuation of residential use. The only observation or comment that I have is that because of the age of our plans and the changing circumstances, it is the right of the landowner to, and our program to enable a request for the consideration of a change of plan when there are circumstances that appear to warrant consideration. As I had said in the 1980s, the Talon Center wasn't in existence, and neither was Winslow Drive. So with that intersection, it always brings the question of, locating commercial development. So it is the landowner's right to request consideration, and that's basically what we're doing here is asking, is this an appropriate location for commercial development as proposed?
Just as a follow-up to that, we talked about this at the last discussion on this particular plan as well. And there was the St. Margaret's Bay Stewardship Association actually led a process of developing the village plan in 2014. So there's something more current on the books that sort of defines what is anticipated and what people would like, and keeping and maintaining that look and feel of a village in the area, and really kind of
we're talking about Talon Crossroads, right? Down at number 3 and the 215.
No, it extends up into that area as well. It's not just down at the crossroads.
We did a watershed study considering that area, and we would and as part of this process, we will be reflecting on the findings.
There is a subsection of the municipal planning strategy and I actually looked at it today and had a bit of a look, and just to refresh my memory about our discussions from the last meeting as well. And at that time, I think the discussion was that maybe if there's a problem with the plan, that there should be a secondary review. And that was something that was put on the table that hasn't been brought up since. Obviously, it's only a year ago, but rather than diving in and changing the zoning on a residential plot that can't be rezoned through the normal process of rezoning, that was part of our discussion, was the fact that this is something that has been looked at in recent years. It's not going all the way back to 1987, and I think that the community would rely on a more current view of what they wanted their community to be developed like. So that's the reason I'm bringing that up. I do think that we have to be careful about looking at a residentially zoned site and changing it into a commercial one by development agreement. I don't think that that's something that we should be agreeing to, and I don't think that's something that this committee is really, maybe based on our work over the past year that I've been here. I just don't think that that's something that that we've really sort of delved into, like just rewriting basically what a zone is by adding prohibited uses as enabled uses. So I'm a little leery of that element of things. So that's all I'd like to say about it. I just bringing up some of the history, and also I have concerns. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Stacy. If something comes up and we have time later, we'll come back to you. I want to get through everybody here, and we are running out of time. So next is Mark Backerdux.
Yeah, couple of questions. One, is there a possibility of, if we do allow this to occur, to enforce the access off of Westwood Boulevard in between the existing Petro-Can and Dairy Queen locations? There's actually a little bit of a cul-de-sac throughway that could provide access into that area without impacting the traffic on Winslow Drive. One. Number two, just having driven by that particular location and knowing where the proposed access off Winslow Drive is, that it actually goes down into a gully there. So without knowing, what the future elevation of that site might be, the fact that you're coming out on a curve and up a hill seems to be kind of not an appropriate access into that area. The other question, and this is a question that I have, would be, what's the impact of that Nova Scotia Power Easement across that property as it relates to residential development? So while I recognize that that little corner is currently designated for residential, would there actually be residential development on there because of that Nova Scotia Power Easement?
Well,
right.
the area is zoned R1, single unit dwelling zone. So we would have to issue a permit for the residential development because I know of no bylaws saying that you cannot build there. However, it is not an ideal location for the development of residential development next to the power lines. And we saw this as an opportunity to consider an alternative use of the location, which is why we recommended that council consider the request for plan amendment in this area.
And I do echo Stacy's comments with respect to traffic and just the impact there, which is why I'm suggesting that it come off Westwood Boulevard as opposed to Winslow Drive. There's no reason to have a fourth set of lights within a very short distance there if a set of lights had to be included at Winslow Drive and Hammonds Plains Road. And that seems to be the more applicable continuation of that commercial zone at exit 5 into that area south of Winslow Drive, in between Winslow and Hammonds Plains Road.
And I just, may I clarify,
Yes.
through you, that the traffic impact statement did not find that there would be a need with the proposed development for a signalized intersection at Winslow and Hammonds Plains Road. I just needed to clarify that point for the member.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it, Mark?
Thank you, yes.
Thank you. Trevor Ennis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I kind of echo Mark's comments there, questions about the high power lines there running along the northwest edge and the southern part of this parcel. And I was going to ask the same question as to the feasibility of residential uses there. And I do understand the limitations of accessing Westwood from that area. So I guess one of my questions really at this point would be about the uses of the property, where you did mention one of the possible uses would be like service stations. And with the number of service stations in the area, I'd be concerned with adding another one as far as environmental assessment impacts go. And the only other thing that I would be keen on is the controls that would be in place for the hours of the operation, so that if there were offices, that they would be like 8 until 6 p.m., thereby slowing down everything after 6 o'clock. Those would be my main concerns with this situation.
Okay, thank you. And Jacqueline Levert.
Hi, Madam Chair, I'm wondering if Maureen can tell us, are you saying that there probably would not be residences built?
No, I'm not saying that they wouldn't be built. I'm saying they could be built, but I'm saying from a planning perspective, when looking at the request, staff had found that this was an opportunity to consider alternative uses on this site that might be better suited in light of the location of the power lines.
Okay, so my concern is that we have lack of housing we have lots of young people not being able to access land and houses in HRM, which is becoming more and more rare and expensive. And to turn something that could be housing into commercial when there's already a designation it should be residential. I understand that, yeah, power lines aren't great, but I see houses on Hammonds Plains very close to a power, line there by Kingswood. So I'm thinking maybe people would find a way, and I'm not an expert, so I can't tell that, but I'm still very uncomfortable with turning any residential land, which is rare, into commercial land. I also am cognizant of the comments of the people who bought across the street. The only way I would consider anything close to this would be as if we would limit this tremendously as to what it could be. For example, offices, so that it would not be impacting the houses nearby at all hours of the night, or with lighting, or with traffic, or with whatever, so that you would have a limited amount of people going in and out, and that it would be more like a professional center or an office. That would be the only thing that I would be comfortable giving up residential land for, just because it's not maybe as great a residential plot as it could be. Still, I would much rather it remain the way it is, open to families being able to access land to build houses.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. Gina Jones-Wilson. There you are.
Good evening, everyone. I'm quite familiar with this area, and I echo Stacy. I am really not with changing, well, I know not changing zoning, but when we get into, it's residential for a reason. Yeah, I'm just not comfortable with changing that, because where does this stop? Like, are we going to open up floodgates where, developers just, they see a piece of land, so now they come and they want to change it. I'm not comfortable with the reasoning behind it, and I'm in that area all the time, and I'm not sure when these traffic studies are done, because that area is about 10-minute drive from where I live, and it's a road, it's traffic constantly. So I have an issue with that. And there's no room to put in probably another set of lights before you get to the lights where you're going to Sobey. So that's definitely not going to happen. So I do actually think there's probably going to be issue with them coming out of Winslow. So that's where I am with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Gina. Kathy Deagle-Gammon, Councillor Kathy Deagle-Gammon, sorry.
No worries at all. I worked hard for that title. Thank you.
I know you did.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Maureen. What a really thorough review. You do your work really well. Thank you. And that we've got those 3 bullet points that in our agenda to look at. And I'm going to go from the bottom up. Does the proposal address the comments given by the PAC on March 3rd? It does. Right? The proposal answers those things nicely. Would a development agreement be the appropriate mechanism? It would, if we said yes. But is commercial development an appropriate use? I agree with most of the people that have spoken. I actually don't think commercial is an appropriate use. I do think it should remain residential. I do think that the respect was given to the landowner in terms of to do the work. Yes, there was he could ask for the change. So we've done our, the HRM staff have done their work well. And now that we get to recommend as a planning advisory committee what we think of that. I don't think that the commercial use is appropriate. I do think that we do need to, as our colleagues have said and Jacqueline has said, it's residential. People bought their properties. They brought, probably doing their great due diligence to find out what was the zoning around them. I know I did that when I bought my home, and for somebody to come in years later and to be able to make that change, it's very uncomfortable. And it doesn't respect the surrounding community in the way that I think that it should. So I wouldn't recommend that the commercial development be an appropriate use of the property. So,
Okay.
but thank you for doing a great job, Maureen. I loved it, so that we can come to these good conclusions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. My question here is, how are we able to consider this when we're looking at anything that's brought before us? We're told that we have to consider the policies that are there that would enable things to happen. This one says there are no enabling policies. So why are we even looking at it?
May I speak to that?
Yes, yes, please.
Because council has asked you as an advisor to give their comment on the plan amendment request before you. And we're not looking at any specific criteria, but from your collective judgment of development agreements, are they useful techniques for controlling adverse effects on surrounding areas? Can they address stormwater? Can they address light pollution? Can they address, and in light of the proposal before you, they're seeking your comments or concerns, recommendation on whether or not you reject this proposal, or you accept this proposal with conditions, or you accept it outright.
Okay, thank you very much. Stacy.
You're still on mute, Stacy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Development agreements sort of can add conditions to help, create compatible situations, but are we supposed to use a development agreement to add prohibited activities to a site? I don't think that that's a really proper use of a development agreement. I don't think it's appropriate for us to rezone something in this fashion, because that's essentially what we would be doing. I'm not in favor of using a development agreement to get around existing zoning. If they want to do something there are other types of residential developments that might be more compatible, like seniors housing, or something different. If they feel like that power line running across the one top corner of each of those lots is going to prohibit it being developed into a residential site, lot 3 isn't on the table tonight. That one is a little bit different. That is more difficult to sell on a residential basis. But these two lots, you could develop them with something that is residentially kind of grounded, like a senior's home or some kind of facility that is housing based and not business based. And the list that they've included as options has been very specifically kind of listed by the residents who live there as not desirable. Restaurants, fast food, gas stations, anything like that. Most of those types of businesses are not going to close at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. And so the residents' concerns about those types of businesses coming there are pretty legitimate. And I feel like asking us to give a nod to rezoning these two sites in this fashion it's not a good use of a development agreement. I don't think it should be used. A development agreement should be used in this way. So.
Okay, thank you. We have approximately 3 minutes until our cutoff time here. Do we want to allow a little bit of extra time to happen? We can, somebody can make a motion that we can go for another 15 minutes.
I would make a motion,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
sorry, that we continue past for about 15 minutes, please.
Okay. Do we need a seconder for that, Andrea?
Yes, you do, Madam Chair.
Okay, Donalda, you can second it. So it's moved by Jacqueline, seconded by Donalda, that we continue for 15 minutes past 9 o'clock. All in favor? Aye.
Chair, Madam Chair, can we just confirm that that's okay with the staff that are present, just in case there's a.
I think we're allowed to do that.
Oh, okay.
We did it last week. Okay, thank you.
For one.
Okay, I did get ayes from everyone.
Aye.
There were no nays. No. Okay, so just to speed things up a little bit here. Okay. Did we have any more questions? Thea, you kept popping in there. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just thought maybe I would try to help the committee with respect to kind of the role here. And this is a scenario where council has asked us to basically go and reevaluate what the planning policies are for these lands. So recognizing that, yes, now today they are residential, but council has given us the direction to go look and see if that's still reasonable. And is it reasonable to look, and is it reasonable to have this commercial proposal? And if it is reasonable, what planning tools would we look at using? It could be a zone or it could be a development agreement. So I just thought I would kind of step in and just try to assist the committee in terms of what it is that they are looking at and why they are seeing something in front of them for consideration that doesn't align with the policies, because we've been given direction by regional council to consider if maybe we should write a new policy for this area. Hopefully that provides some clarity for the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Donalda has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it just, I really appreciate that comment as to why we were asked to reevaluate. But at the end of the day, I think as a council, we still have to take into consideration the communities that we represent, because as an advisory committee, we are their eyes, ears, and voice when we come to the table. And so that's why we have the concerns that we have. And the people who live there are counting on us. At the end of the day, we are an advisory committee. We know we can't make the final rules, but we certainly can make recommendations as if we lived in those neighborhoods.
Absolutely. And thank you for your comments. That's very true, which is why we come to the advisory committee for some advice. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Donalda. Okay, Trevor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to thank Tia for answering that. I kind of would like to echo Stacy's comments earlier and possibly consider if the use of this particular parcels of land were to be changed, that they be changed to accommodate a residential type of arrangement for like senior housing, for example, a senior complex, or that type of a situation as opposed to a commercial operation. That's all I wanted to mention.
Yes. Maureen. Yeah.
Just to clarify, Madam Chair, we can consider a seniors housing development within the residential designation via a development agreement process, and council is currently dealing with, or will be accepting a report from staff about shared housing, and more will come about that in the future. But that is not the request that the developer has made or council has authorized us to consider in this plan amendment process. They've asked you, what are your thoughts about commercial development in this location, and to look at mechanisms that we could use, rezoning, development agreement, et cetera, to consider it. is that wise?
Yeah.
They're not telling you that you have to do this. They're asking you
Good day.
for your feedback.
Yeah. And I guess we should give it to them. So someone would like to make the motion?
I,
Okay, one at a time. Okay. Who? Okay, Donalda, you're still.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend that it not be used for commercial development.
Okay.
I will second that, Donalda.
Okay, it's been moved by Donalda and seconded by Jacqueline. Was that correct?
Could you just restate the motion, please? It was difficult to hear the beginning.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
go ahead, Donalda.
Oh, that we recommend that it not be used for commercial development.
Thank you,
Okay.
Donalda.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we recommend that the status quo be maintained, that the zoning not be changed by any means, and that commercial development doesn't go there. Is that?
Yeah.
That's the gist of our motion. And I'm sure that the clerk has it written down properly. So we can now, I'll call for the question, and all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Okay, one dissenting vote, and the motion is carried. And that is the end of our agenda for tonight. All we have left is to tell you that the date of our next meeting will be April 6th, 2022, we hope.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
could I just, point of privilege, could I just thank Councillor Dago Gammon for her background, a nod to the French during the month of March, which is our month to recognize our culture and language. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. All right. So all we ask now is for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much. And somebody like to second that, just for the sake of seconding it. Seconded by Gina Jones Wilson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate all the discussion. It's been great. And we'll see you the next